Yeah, well, I feel like that actually makes the context of the fall of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Communist Party, that's why it's so important, which is that as long as there was a vehicle and a way of struggling, you were still on basically the side of revolutionary optimism, of like, we can still fight this. But then in the 1990s, it's a very dark period.
I think so.
Because the movement is hollowed out, the organization collapses basically. And so in that time, yeah, how did the crisis look with like the combination of the fall of the Soviet Union, the crime bill, which criminalized and incarcerates so many black men, the collapse of the world communist movement, the victory lap of the US state, and then like NAFTA and the World Trade Organization, all this globalization stuff, and like interventionist proxy wars like the Gulf War. Like at that point, like how do you identify like the huge problems facing the American people in the 90s? And what did that mean for the political struggle? If the Communist Party was also not what it was, how did you interpret like where the world and the United States was going?
Well, first of all, you know, I saw the world communist movement as the greatest peace movement. And, you know, just from what I was thinking, you know, I was saying this to Pulver on Saturday. My predisposition or my tendency when a battle is setting up, is emerging, my predisposition is always to go to the front of the struggle, to join the struggle, to join the battle, you know, not to retreat from it. Right. I can't explain it, I really cannot, but so I'm trying to rethink what I was feeling. I was angry in a certain sense because so much was being set back. But I felt as long as there was Winston, there was a steady hand, a man who could lead. When we didn't have him, we didn't have leadership. We did not have it. And so I'm a bit bewildered. By this time, I would say I'm in my late 30s, early 40s, still young. I had all of these experiences that we've spoken about, but I'm young. I don't, by the way, I mean, whatever power I had in the Communist Party had a lot to do with Winston. I was not able, or nor did I want to, operate without him. You know what I'm saying? And so when he's gone, and then it's just Gus, and he's trying to hold on, but he's not the leader Winston is. My first inclination is to defend him, his leadership, in the ways that I saw Winston defend his leadership, as defending the unity of the party. Gus Hall had a very important, stellar record in the party, you know, from Minnesota and the iron ore ranges, that, you know, he was a miner in that, and then in McCarthyism, he did almost 8 years in federal penitentiary, so he was tested. But without Winston, then you get these forces who were frankly against Winston and Hall, but could not openly challenge Winston for leadership. You know what I'm saying? Now Winston is going, now they make a move to bring Gus Hall down and to replace him with their people. you know, and they didn't have to worry about being charged with racism or any of that because Gus is white. So my predisposition is to go to the front of struggle. But then confusion is added on to confusion with Gorbachev. Now this, I don't think you all can understand what that was like. The General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union is openly saying, and the corporate media is repeating it every day to the world, that Gorbachev is saying that communism has failed, that the Soviet Union never was anything but Stalinist, that Leninism, again, was a failure, and that he would be a liberalizing and reformist general secretary. It was almost as though he was saying that I'll try to hold on to this as long as I can, but I won't feel anything if it all falls apart. And this is where the sense of betrayal, and this is my own feeling, you know, I'm feeling this, where, I mean, some people that I thought when Winston fell, they would take up the flag that he was carrying. These were his old heads, his people that were with him, you know, his age group, and they didn't. The ones that could have. I won't name names here, but they became politically ambiguous. And so, you know, Gorbachev wrapped a lot of his, what he was saying in this idea that he's doing it for the sake of peace, to limit nuclear weapons in Europe, to come to some kind of détente with the West, a new level of détente and peaceful coexistence, where, you know, all of this. And, you know, everybody wants peace, because we've been fighting against these intermediary nuclear weapons being placed in the center of Europe.
It's Mel.
Huh?
Oh, that was a male.
Mel.
Pardon
A
me?
mailman.
No, okay. I mean, we all wanted that.
Right.
But is that really what it was about for Gorbachev? Or was it to make the claim of peace in order to betray and undo the Soviet Union, and thus the world communist movement? And so, you know, again, factions began to form. You had people who, I don't know, I don't want to misrepresent anybody, but you had some elder statesmen of the party who, rather than take a stance and stand up, became politically ambiguous. You had others, and I won't name them now, who I saw as, they just became, they didn't say anything. You know, here's the battle. Where do you stand? What is your position? It could not be, you couldn't know. But then you had an aggressive faction which wanted to undo the party and take power. This, you know, that article, and it might be good to look at it again, by Michael Meyerson, where he attacks Romesh. Well, he was a part of a very aggressive and well-established faction. And his bitterness up to this day is that he and they could not take power in the party. And I can tell you, if you look at the leadership of the Communist Party today, what you have are elements that did very little to fight in that moment of crisis. And I could say it directly to them, and they, well, you know how I am. And that kind of, I felt it as betrayal, but still my predisposition is to go to the front of struggle. And I wasn't afraid. And that's why, Nuri, I want to get, some of those documents. We'll get them after all of this is over. But so we take on this struggle. By 1991, am I going beyond the question that you asked?
No, go on. Yeah. We'll follow.
By 1991, the Soviet Union collapses. In that same year, we had the party convention. And a big part of the delegates walked out. They were a faction known because they were blocked in their attempt to take power. Among them were some very well-known communists, some of the most well-known, such as Angela Davis, such as Herbert Aptheker. I'll say this. I would say Jim and Esther Jackson remained pretty ambiguous, like waiting to see who won and then making whatever deal they could, There were people kind of on the periphery of the party who had been in the party but were not anymore, but still connected to it. They were not party members, but still connected to the party, who on the fringes were agitating and trying to make deals. So you get all of this going on. And you had to defend the principles upon which the party was based. They wanted to throw it all out. But I was not, and I felt that after that 1991 convention, we at least did not dissolve the party. And so my sense was, let's move forward. And of course, I'm not exaggerating this, I see the party in the mold that Winston was developing, but everybody didn't. And I remember it was very shocking to me when I heard Gus Hall, I think at a national committee meeting, make the statement, "We're back to class." I said, back to, well, where were we all the rest of the time? In other words, we're back to the class struggle. We had been diverted from it. And I'm assuming, did you mean by Winston?
There's a lot of nuances there.
Well, I just wanted to basically, this has been, I've been asking you about this a lot, where what the broad sense it gives me is how much time, effort, struggling it takes to build something like what Winston had built, and how relatively simple it is to take it all down. Where the people who have this almost, who already have an agenda to take it down, obviously know what they're doing, but you can also equally be a party to it by not resisting, by being too weak to resist.
But see, what you have to see is the global situation. The rug was pulled out from under us. See, the Communist Party of the United States was probably one of the most pro-Soviet parties in the world. We were very close to the Soviet Party. And I mean, how do we go forward? The whole so-called left, the social democrats and liberal left, and people who claim to be communists and the Trotskyites, all at this point saying, "We told you so."
Right.
So not only did we have the fight to hold on to the party, even with a lot of people leaving, but then you have this other group, the Social Democrats, who always sang the Soviet Union is anti-democratic, and Stalinist, and the Trotskyites saying the same thing. So it wasn't that easy. But I hear what you're saying. It was an opportunity to reconfigure the party, to look at the objective situation, to take our losses and try to rebuild. But here it is, Paul. We would have to have had the right position on the civil rights movement.
Right.
And with Winston gone, we did not have that leadership that knew that understood. That's what I would say.
Yeah, because Winston was drawing on the Soviet Union, but then also the centrality of King. And
Definitely.
that's sort of what I was trying to get at.
And King and all of those were moving. First of all, they had rejected anti-communism.
Yes.
You know, King's famous speech.
Yeah.
And then the SCLC and the Civil Rights Movement is moving close to the Soviet peace policy through the World Peace Council.
And so it was clearing the way for this broad unity
My point.
based on basically
That's right.
the triple evils.
That's right.
Like the fight against poverty, the fight against militarism and war, the fight against racism.
That's right.
All of that was cleared to have a broad mass movement. But then in the 90s, all of that is taken down, and instead you have all this infighting, all of this like petty like fighting.
But see, the other thing, Nori, and this is what I want to say, the failure of people who could have stood up to stand up. And there are people that even to this day, I said, well, how could you not? Didn't you understand what Winston was saying? Obviously not. Because, see, it's very seductive to talk about class struggle. Class struggle. You know? But that means nothing. That's just sloganizing. If you do not have a policy that really understands what that Third American Revolution was about and how it was morphing into this peace, all humanity thing. And, you know, that's why I said I would say it now, I don't know that I realized it then. There were opportunities, even for a communist party with fewer people, to develop a broad line, you know what I'm saying? But you would have to, the sloganizing about class struggle and all of that, you know.
Well, okay, because it seems like really the Million Man March is very important in this landscape. Because the Million Man March is a gathering in Washington, it's basically like there are a lot of parallels to the March on Washington. But it's also Farrakhan establishing himself as a leader of Black people in that time. A leadership that actually can bring people together. And I feel like in a lot of ways, like looking back, it seems like that time in 1995, the Million Man March, which is having its 30th anniversary, like right now, was basically a bright spot in all of that darkness. And so what did that say?
I couldn't agree with you more, and I felt like that.
Yeah, but like what does that say to you as a revolutionary about the democratic capacity of the people, the opportunities that were still there, like basically the consciousness of the people and the spirit of resistance that was there. And thus as a result, like the failure of organizations like the Communist Party to be able to actually respond to that. Because it sounds like what you're saying is that the Communist Party, even if it had been a smaller organization, if it had taken the right position on the Million Man March, there would have been an opportunity to actually broaden that struggle. And so, what does it say about the people and the organizations who did not see it that way? And then on the other hand, what actually did come out of the Million Man March? Like, how are people transformed? What programs and organizations came out of it? Because ultimately you end up leaving the Communist Party over the Million Man March. You go to the Million Man March, where Philadelphia has the largest contingent with 1199C,
Yes.
and
Henry Nicholas.
and ASME DC-33,
Yes.
bringing the most number of people. And then you found the Afro-American Freedom and Reconstruction League.
Mhm.
And so we kind of want to know more about that period, how you were thinking about it, and what that really meant.
Yeah, the contrast really.
It's back to your question that you always ask me. And of course, the Million Man March, I viewed as we can fight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if, see, go back to this Black Jewish alliance,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
You see, since the Zionists don't like Farrakhan,
Yeah.
then we don't have to, we have to not like Farrakhan. So, they say 2 million now. Black men show up and the Communist Party is boycotting it. And I'll say this. There are many people in the leadership of the Communist Party or associated in one or another way with the Communist Party who took that position. And never, you know, it's never a thing of, oh, we made a mistake. Oh, you know, no, it's just, so what? And I felt in a lot of ways, very frankly, it was a capitulation of white supremacy. And I'm telling you, all of these black women and black leaders were on the stage. I mean, the great Rosa Parks. Oh, what, she doesn't know what she's doing? Maya Angelou. I don't know if Toni Morrison was there. But here you get communists, Angela Davis. I guess, you know, that some old fake feminism. She's never been the same, by the way. And all of these people in the committees of correspondence, which had broken with the party in 1991, the party and the committees of correspondence were united in the attack upon the Million Man March. Could, even if you don't like Farrakhan, okay, separate him from 2 million black men. And even the mayor of Washington, who had been a part of that group at Fisk University with James Lawson, Marion Barry. Without him being the mayor, it could not have happened. He made so much possible. And here in Philadelphia, Joe Certain, who was the managing director of the city, worked tirelessly to help mobilize black men to go there. And then these two powerful unions. I mean, and they don't say, you know, here is, you know, double screen. Can't support the Million Man March, but no kings. This is going to save us all. Looks like white capitulation of white supremacy to me. But I agree with, it was like I felt now, but and you know, people criticize the Million Man March because it did not come forward with a program of struggle to continue, but the conditions then were not as positive as the conditions even for the 1963 march. How do you go forward? It was not clear. And you all are right. The country was in the world was in a counter-revolutionary moment. China was weak, was trying to rebuild from the Cultural Revolution. There had been coups and assassinations and Western-sponsored so-called ethnic civil wars in Africa. By 1994, you know, South Africa had won against apartheid, but then the victory was very hollow because the ANC abandoned its basic program of nationalizing the wealth of the country. So you have a black government and growing poverty and growing violence and growing everything else in South Africa. And by the way, I wrote an essay on that on Nelson Mandela. So here we have this movement. We see this growing criminalization. So it was difficult to see how we move forward, but it showed the strengths and weaknesses of the Nation of Islam. It had this leader who could mobilize the people and the Nation of Islam, but it did not yet have the political education to know how to build a movement. And they don't. Even up to this day, they don't. But it was a great stance, it's a statement. Am I answering the question?
No, you are answering the question.
Yeah, because we were going to ask you
Our
about
next
it.
question was about Nelson Mandela, but you already covered it. Because I think we had wanted to basically, like he was released in 1990. Apartheid did end in the 1990s, and that was after,
1994.
and it was after a 20+ year long struggle against apartheid. But did it actually feel like a victory?
No.
Or was it hollow?
No.
What did it say about like your work with like those years of working in that organization?
It didn't feel like a victory to me, especially when I saw all of these black misleaders and liberals and so on going over there. When I saw, and then I found out so many things about Nelson Mandela in prison, and after he was released to he wasn't in prison, but he wasn't free yet, so they had him in a house. And after I saw the assassination of Chris Hani, who was along with Mandela, Winnie Mandela, these were the three most popular leaders among the people. And I saw the Communist Party, which had split with Joe Slovo. It didn't feel like a victory to me at all. Maybe South Africa is recovering some of its dignity, some of its strength in, with the Palestinian situation. But the ANC leadership failed. And,
I guess we wanted to also then ask that in this period of turbulence and transition, that was marked by this hollowness, that people are retreating into compromising on revolutionary positions by communists, leftists, and even a certain strata of black leadership like you're mentioning. How did you respond? How did you survive this push towards compromise and conforming without a people's movement behind you or the movement in general? And what allowed you to continue to struggle against the grain?
Well, one thing, I went back, I got a PhD. I got a PhD because I needed credentials to get a job, And I guess I mentioned this before, I did it on this group of Marxists and yada, yada, yada. And it gave me a chance to kind of complete a circle in terms of trends in Marxism and so on. So I get a job, and I didn't know, but I'm telling you, I knew this. that if a movement emerged, I wanted to be in it. I wasn't going to be in no bullshit, no identity politics, all of that. But if something came along, this is why I started the free school. Not to be what it is today. I had no idea it would become like this. But to be honest, I didn't know. I just didn't know. But I don't think I felt depressed or anything like that. I was trying to look at events, look at trends in the world, etc. And then, of course, in 2014, I think 2014, you get Trayvon Martin, people are marching, and then you get a whole series of police killings of kids, as it were. There was Sandra Bland, all of this is on video. And you remember we did that demonstration, I forget her name, this woman who was literally killed in prison by prison guards. And you guys got to see the video of that. They had her in a cell, and she was naked, and these 6 men, white men, in hazmat uniforms come in, and they're going to so-called extract her. And her last words, "You said you weren't going to kill me." Remember that? And so we organized a demonstration for her, but all of this is happening, and this Black Lives Matter becomes a slogan. The 3 women from California who were responsible for the slogan, and it's being transmitted through the internet, suddenly become, as the ruling class, as it appropriates this movement, they become the authors of this movement. And it's interesting, when I think about it, it is to undermine any memory of the Million Man March. So in 2016 and 2015, but definitely by 2016, I guess it was, yes, 2015, 2016, you're having all of these huge marches around Black Lives Matter against the killing of black men especially, but also black women by police. But most of these marches tended to be majority white people, or all white people. And I'll never forget the New York Times writing articles about the huge amounts of funds going to tens of millions of dollars. And then they were celebrating it as the greatest civil rights movement ever. And if you go back and look at the New York Times, all on the front page. But I didn't see it that way, of course.
Well, I think we also wanted to go over that period of University of Sciences, but then also Temple, because like you were saying, it wasn't or never felt like an option to you to just give up and be like, we'll see what happens, or we'll make compromises with the Democratic Party or whatever. You wanted to see what could emerge and then align yourself.
And one of the things, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I became, although I've been active all the time, became more active in the fight to free Mumia. As I told you, we set up this organization, the African American Freedom and Reconstruction League. I joined with Gregory Walker to establish the Brothers Network, but I really devoted a lot of time to Mumia and his freedom, and kind of intertwined it with everything else I was doing, including the Black Radical Tradition Conference. what else did I want to say? Yeah, I wasn't sitting on the sidelines. I found a way to get involved. But, I'm sorry.
No, and I mean, touching on that, I also feel a broader, like, philosophical, theoretical turn towards Du Bois.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask because you said a little bit last time about these Du Bois conferences that you were organizing at the University of Sciences.
This is in the 90s.
In the 90s. And then even after that, when you joined the African American Studies Department at Temple, your pedagogy is still so much rooted in Du Bois and the Black radical tradition.
Absolutely.
And so, sidelines is out of the question. This, you're actively a part of an ideological struggle at a time when the university is also increasingly becoming one of the chief attackers of the ideological struggle, But the first question we wanted to ask is to very broadly, what was this switch like from the life of a professional revolutionary to having to continue the revolutionary struggle?
Without a revolutionary movement.
But also in academic settings, that relationship towards students, a mentorship of young people. And what was that like? What was your pedagogy? If you could say a little bit.
I think it seems like what we've just been talking about is we're talking about all of the elements that are necessary for a mass movement to actually be able to succeed or to be able to win something for the people. And there's leadership that's necessary, there's unity and an actual bringing together of the people that's necessary, but there's also basically ideas, ideological clarity.
No question.
In addition to obviously courage that you felt was lacking. And it seems like the ideological struggle is really where you're basically going.
Yes, and that's why the university, this is what I'm thinking, the university could be a place where the struggle of ideas and establishing Du Bois in the academy. He wasn't there. But the other thing is the community with the African American Freedom and Reconstruction League and the movement to free Mumia. So I'm working with Pan Africa a great deal, and we become really fast friends. And also I'm demonstrating to free the Move 9 and what was left of them. And that was a stretch for me because the Move 9 and Move really was an anti-revolutionary organization. But, the fire in 1985 and all those people killed, it would be hard to walk away from that. And so it's like you said. So I'm saying I'm in a university. And I started it at the University of the Science to establish Du Bois in the academy. Then they asked me to come to Temple to continue that work, which I agreed to do. But you're right, just the way you put it, Paul. And thus, whether I fully knew it or not, I was moving more to a Du Boisian position. And frankly, without being boisterous about it or speaking about it a lot, I was beginning to question how useful Marxism-Leninism was in a world where there was no longer a world communist movement or Soviet Union. And I wasn't certain. But I did start, teaching Du Bois and others, but mainly Du Bois. And so it's Du Bois and the community, Du Bois and the fight for Mumia and other political prisoners and against the death penalty and with this the Brothers Network to establish a mechanism for black men of all sexualities to come together. And that's one of the great things that Gregory did. Keep it black men, you know.
So, you talked about putting Du Bois back in the struggle of ideas, back into the university, and even basically the discourse or what's possible to talk about in academia. How did that actually go? Like, what happened in these conferences? Was it an uphill battle? How much was Du Bois readily accepted versus not? Because I think we have to see the crisis also as a crisis of ideas.
Yeah.
And in this time, you also have the emergence of like postmodernist theory,
Absolutely.
third wave feminism, Afrocentrism, and like cultural nationalism, like you mentioned. And so, how does the ideological landscape work with Du Bois and these other figures? What was the purpose of these theories, do you think? And also, how did the university basically change over like basically the 25-year period that you were there? Where you had said that at first at Youth Sciences there wasn't really resistance to you doing these Du Bois conferences. They're very popular.
And a lot of support.
Yes. But how does that, how does all of that shake out?
Well, it's when I came to Temple that, you know, the real resistance to Du Bois begins. And that's because Molefe Asante's Afrocentrism was always openly attacking Du Bois. But he was not in power when I got there. He would return to power. But one would have thought that it would have been a feather in the hat of African American studies at Temple to become a central place for the study of Du Bois, not singularly, but a part of a curriculum. It never developed. I taught graduate courses in Du Bois, and I think I influenced a lot of graduate students. I think that I played a role in establishing Du Bois or reestablishing Du Bois in the academy. Now there had been, I think the African American Studies Department at University of Massachusetts was called the W.E.B. Du Bois Department of African American Studies. There were some scholars like Manning Marable who taught and championed Du Bois, but I believe kind of that what I was doing was to enlarge the meaning of Du Bois and the study of Du Bois and really the application of Du Bois.
Not just as a thing in the past.
Absolutely.
To be understood, but
Yes.
to be applied.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess you touched upon this already, but along with, around, so 2012 is when you actually start free school, and when
Yes.
it starts out at Temple, and this is still 2 years till, your eventual firing on ideological and political grounds, which we want to talk about.
Right.
But I guess at this time you also are, like you were saying, you were involved in the struggle to free the Move 9, and then, the Brothers Network, and I'm forgetting the name, but the Afro-American Freedom and Reconstruction League. For free school specifically, I think I wanted to ask, like, what that initial vision was, and why did it feel like something like the free school just needed to exist? Was it like a response to, like, the university, the direction in which they were moving? how knowledge production had basically been given up on, and it was just about all these theories, postmodernism, identity politics, which couldn't really guide a movement, which couldn't really clarify what is the position one should take. Yeah, so if you could just talk about what that initial vision for free school was. What
well, you're very right about that. One could feel in the 90s going forward a real shift in the academy towards people like Foucault and Derrida and literary criticism, which you know a lot about, Nuri, and away from Du Bois. Afrocentrism is an attack upon Du Bois, you know. So it's the academy by the early 1990s, in fact, and then with the collapse of the Soviet Union, is moving against Du Bois. I'm involved in an opposite movement, a counter movement, and setting up the Saturday Free School was an attempt to recreate the kind of movement that produced African American studies in the first place, the unity of students and the community on Saturdays. Then when but it then became difficult because the university was not interested because university rooms, you know. And then the department began to tell students don't come. So we were down to a few people. I mean, can you imagine a Saturday free school of 4 people? Yeah. So I decided to go to the Church of the Advocate and ask Pastor Renee if we could have space to do free school. She agreed, you know, and we would pay a certain amount. Matter of fact, I was paying it myself, but $250 a month. And the reason I restarted, because at a point I said, oh, this is not going to work, and I just stopped. 2 women, Ada Don Martin and Cassandra. This is Cassandra's, I forget her last name now. They came here and they said to me, we want to continue the free school. And I said, well, what y'all want to study? And Cassandra said, Kant. I said, wow. And then, you know, went to the Church of the Advocate and got it started again. But it is in that period, and it was difficult to get it restarted. You know, there were, you know, it was mainly black, it was older but also students. But it was not as stable and committed as the free school is today. And it was unclear to most people whether this is an activist organization or just a book club. Many people whose names I won't mention wanted just a book club, and they said it after a point. They felt uncomfortable with many things that would ultimately occur, such as the Black Radical Tradition Conference, and then the year of Du Bois, and then the year of Gandhi, you know, and they felt, oh, you're going too far. Your free school is becoming an organization, and I only wanted to be a part of a book club. Well, why didn't you tell me that at first then? You know, and so, but again, my predisposition is not to back up. Even when I got the notice that I would not be rehired, my first inclination is not to go somewhere and pout. I said, well, okay, now we gotta fight.